What is up, YouTube? We are back with another Battlefield 2042 video. Today we are going to be discussing tanks. I love tanks. I love playing in tanks in Battlefield. I loved playing them in 4. I love playing them in 2042. Um, Tanks are really interesting because you have, it's a 4-seater. So you have 4 people that can all be in the same vehicle, all pushing towards the same objective or helping to, take out enemy vehicles or personnel or any of that. So you have lots of options. And with all those options, it can get quite confusing and which one to use in which scenario and which one's the best and which one's the worst. And we're going to cover a lot of those questions today and try to get some of those answers of not only what I like to use in different scenarios, what I mostly go to the battlefield with, and that also changes on what kind of game type I'm playing as well. So you have to also take that into consideration. So let's go through and sitting in the driver's seat, right? So you have 3 primary weapons: the MPAT shell, the heat shell, and the staff shell. MPAT shell is going to be amazing against vehicles. It's going to be okay against anti-personnel. Has minimal splash damage, but does have some, so you don't have to hit direct hits against personnel, but very strong against vehicles. Against another tank, it's usually only 3 shells to kill it. So realize that if you're going to be going out and hunting armor or hunting planes or anything in the air, the MPAT shell is a great choice to use there. It is going to be your most powerful of the shells against any other vehicle. Your heat shell is going to be used against anti-personnel. You can use it. Obviously, it does do damage against vehicles, but not nearly as much. It usually takes around 5 shells to kill another tank. So take that in consideration. It does have quite a bit of drop as well, so you'll have to compensate for that for longer shots. The MPAT shell is pretty straight, just to go back to that real quick from a distance, but it does have a little bit of drop over distance. Back to the heat shell. This is great for infantry. You want to use this against infantry if you are going into game mode like Breakthrough and you are on offense and you know that the defense is only going to have a limited amount of vehicles from the beginning. You want to go with the heat shell. You're going to rank up those numbers extremely quickly with all the splash damage that comes out of the heat shell. So take the heat shell in when you're playing Breakthrough and you're on offense, because you know your vehicles are gonna outnumber theirs, and you can really focus on the infantry. The staff shell is pretty much only good against vehicles. You can kill personnel or infantry with it, but it has to be a direct hit. The splash damage is almost non-existent. It's not worth your time to even deal with. You don't really want to deal with shooting personnel with this, unless you're like completely out and you got to reload on the light machine gun or something, and it's your only option. I don't know. I wouldn't even waste your time. So it's great because it does have a smart targeting against land vehicles. With the SOFLAM, you can use it against air vehicles, the staff shell. But with that targeting, it does counter for tiny, minuscule movements when something's on the run or moving or a truck's going pretty quickly. It will lock on and be able to hit that. So that's pretty great. It's great for obviously over long distances as well because it shoots extremely straight. It's pretty much like a laser. There's very little drop to anything that staff shell throws out, so that's also something to think about. So the MPAT, a little bit of drop. Heat shell, a lot more drop. Staff shell, almost no drop at all. So those are your 3 main primary. MPAT is going to be your most versatile. It allows you to do a little bit of both. Great against vehicles, decent against personnel. Heat shell, great against personnel or infantry. Okay. I would say, less than when you're fighting against other vehicles. The reason with the heat shell is it's going to definitely take you more rounds to take things out. So, that's usually one of the areas where you're going to get killed is if you're going against other armor. So just take that into consideration. But you can counterbalance some of the heat shells issues against other vehicles with some of the other seats. So we'll get into that just as much with the MPAT as you can as well with the personnel. Moving into the secondary weapons, coax light machine gun, heavy machine gun. Very similar. Light machine gun's great because it obviously it's a higher rate of fire, and it's great for anti-personnel. The heavy machine gun, obviously anti-personnel and soft vehicle targets. Very similar. It's just realized that the heavy is going to have a slower rate of fire, so it might be a little bit more difficult to kill anti-personnel, but it definitely does some work against lighter trucks, bolts, things like that when you're trying to kill drivers. So does a good job there. Equipment slots, smoke chargers. This is all smoke packages. I usually almost always go with the thermal smoke package because it can break locks. They all have their, this is a regular smoke. This kind of creates like a fence, a smoke fence, and then the thermal as a chemical smoke around the vehicle, which usually gets rid of locks, which is why I almost always go with the thermal package. Repair system, always want to have that on for sure. All right, let's move to the first weapons station. Let's go through these real quick, and then we'll come back to why you choose what you do. All right, heavy machine gun, just like on the driver. It's the 50 cal, not the light. It's pretty decent against anti-personnel and decent against soft vehicle targets. So realize that's great if you're going to be going and hunting infantry. Minigun, almost it is all anti-personnel. Doesn't really do any damage. It doesn't do any damage to armored vehicles. You can obviously do some work against trucks and things like that. And then you have your tow missile, which is a wire guided missile. If you're going personnel, you're going to go with either heavy machine gun or minigun, obviously. And then the tow missile is great for backup against vehicles. And you can certainly take down air vehicles. It's wire guided, so if you have a driver or you're the person in this seat, you can take your shots, and I've seen it done. It works quite well. So realize that those options, these first two, definitely personnel. The tow missile obviously is vehicle. All right. Lots of choices here. 40 millimeter volley pod frag grenades. This to me is useless. I know it's the first thing that you come with. Not a huge fan of it at all, but it is what it is. It's great for just things right around the vehicle if you're trying to kill somebody who's trying to come up in C5. Canister weapon pod. So this is more of like I would say like a shotgun. I absolutely love this. This is great for close range, keeping people away from the tank for no C5 kills. Great for anti-personnel. Real big fan of this one. The anti-vehicle barrage, the rocket pod. This is okay. It's not that it's not accurate. Just realize it doesn't hit exactly where you're looking at all times. But it's decent. It does a little bit of damage. It's okay. If it's what you have unlocked out of these three and you're going up more against vehicles, you can certainly go after the rocket pod because these first two really are going to do nothing for you. So kinetic grenade pod, big fan of this. This is great for anti-personnel, and it bounces around. You can put it through windows if there's a bunch of infantry hiding in a room or in a house. This is very great to use. For direct hits, it's a little difficult. You kind of got to bounce them around or bounce them off the ground, but bounce them off walls. I think this works great. It has pretty good range too, pretty good distance, and it's a good choice for anti-personnel. I really like this one as well. The last one here is the 60 millimeter mortar weapon pod. This is crazy. So I didn't really use this too much, and then when I was getting the clips for this video, I didn't realize how devastating it was. Obviously takes one shot, takes a bit to reload, but it's devastating damage. Good against infantry, good against vehicles. Obviously air vehicles is going to be pretty difficult to hit, especially in a real game when they're not standing still or staying stationary, but it's certainly possible, and have great damage against them as well. What I do like about this is it doesn't have to be a direct fire, so you can go over buildings. You don't have to have direct line of sight. You can put things over trees, over buildings, over walls, doesn't really matter. Has a great splash damage. If you get somebody who gets the eye for this, or gets this honed in, it is amazing. Great for indirect fire when you're fighting one-on-one with another tank. Obviously you're lobbing things onto the top of them, which is pretty amazing as well in itself. So really a big fan of this. Haven't used it too much in actual online gameplay, but I'm going to start after I played around with it in the solo co-op. And just tons of output and tons of splash, which is what I really like. And then it's great for dropping things on buildings, on top of buildings if it's not too high. Just realize when the tank's moving and your target's moving and you're trying to lob this thing, it's gonna be it's gonna be a difficult shot, but it's gonna really bring out some of those crazy trick shots, I'm sure. Because when you hit them over a building, it's pretty satisfying. But I like how much it does well against vehicles and infantry. All right, I know what you're thinking. oh, I know all of the guns. I know how they work. I know what they look like in gameplay. But what am I supposed to choose out of all these options? Well, like I said at the beginning, you gotta figure out what you're doing or what you're going after. Do you feel like you are gonna run into more tanks? Do you feel like you want to really crank up some numbers and try to go after infantry? Or do you want to be prepared for both and stay alive as long as you possibly can? So, with that thought process, if you want to go heavy anti personnel, what I would choose is if we're going all out. We want to take down as many infantry as we can and crank out as much numbers. We don't feel like we're going to have a lot of vehicle opposition. Maybe we're breakthrough on offense. Then I would go heat shell. I would go heavy machine gun as my secondary here, just because I like the range a little bit more, and for the soft vehicle targets, I like that option. In here, I would go heavy machine gun as well. I think that everybody loves the minigun, but when you're playing in this seat and you have the minigun, it takes a lot of rounds to drop somebody, especially when you're moving. The thing's got the cooldown. I think the heavy machine gun's easier to hit people with, so I would stick with heavy machine gun. Tow missile is obviously kind of worthless against anti personnel. So in the weapon pod, two choices here. Actually, kind of three. Hmm. Um, if I want to make it easy on, if I want to make it easy on the person in this seat, because maybe I don't have somebody for sure. I don't have somebody in my squad who's going to be sitting in that seat all the time, or it's going to be a random in the game. I'd either go canister weapon or I would go kinetic grenade pod. You could go mortar. My only concern with going mortar, especially if it's random, they could get frustrated and then not stay in the seat for long, which isn't a help for you. So kinetic grenade pod, I think, and canister weapon pod, I think, are fairly easy to use, especially against personnel. I think they both work pretty well. Obviously, the canister weapon pod doesn't give you a lot of range, so someone might get a little frustrated with that. So you could stick with the kinetic grenade pod, or you could just go with the mortar and say, listen, put down as much splash damage as you can. I know you really can't talk to randoms unless you bring them into a party, so you just hope that they figure it out and they get the first kill pretty easily, and they're like, all right, let's go. So that's what I would go. And really, your main options here are sitting in this seat, and I'd probably go kinetic grenade pod. That's usually what I go with. I'm actually going to start running the mortar weapon pod more if I have a squad, because I'm going to try to walk somebody through really what to look for in the scenarios and try to get them to use it, because I think it's going to have devastating effect. Um, if you are going hunting for vehicles, I would most likely go with the MPAT. One, because it just has so much, it just hits harder, and you can win your tank on tank battles a lot easier. I would go with the heavy machine gun again. Stays the same down below, obviously thermal and repair. In this, I'd go with tow missile, because obviously they're going to help you against another vehicle. And inside this weapon pod, I would go mortar. If you don't have mortar, I'd obviously go rocket pod. Um, the rocket pod's gonna help you even just chip away. It doesn't do a whole ton of damage against vehicles, but it does enough just to it could be down to slivers between you both. If you both have empaths and you're both hitting your shots, after the second round you each hit, whoever gets their next round in cycle is gonna win that battle. So the rocket pod could really help put you over the edge if they just have a sliver of health left. So something to think about there. But the mortar, I'd probably follow that up with. If you want to be a balanced player and you want to stay alive as long as possible, what I'm probably running right now, because that's what I like to do, I like to mix it up. I like to cover all bases. I'd be running the heat shell for my anti personnel, because those M5 recoillesses are a huge pain. Um, I'd keep the heavy machine gun, because my heat shell is going to take care of a lot of splash damage and taking care of a lot of anti-infantry. This can help me out if I got a random whatever coming at me. I can switch over to that, and it's pretty decent against personnel. In the weapon station, I'm going. I'm probably going tow missile here. It depends. If it's a random, I'm probably going heavy machine gun, because randoms are less likely to stick with you if you got a tow missile in here. because they can't rack up the kills outside of the vehicles. If I have somebody I know rolling with me, I'm probably gonna have them sitting at the tow missile so they can help me take out. Because remember, I'm running light over here on the main, so I need heavy backup against the vehicles for the tow missile. So that's why I'm bringing that. If I got to run heavy machine gunner, then I'm definitely going mortar weapon pod on my weapon pod space, because then I'm going to need help against the vehicles, because on my front end and my secondary weapon station are both light on the anti armor or anti vehicle. I'm going to probably struggle with air, even though I could hit, as long as I can hit them, even with the drop of the heat shell. It could be a problem, but I'm hoping I get some help with everybody around me in the game. Um, yeah, that's what I would run to stay balanced. If I'm going anti infantry, I'm going against the armor here if I have somebody sitting in the seat, and then or I'm running heavy machine gun here, and I'm backing it up with the mortar pod because I'm going to need help against the other vehicles. So that's what I'm doing to stay alive long. This mortar weapon pod's going to be newer for me right now. I'm running this tow missile. I'm running the kinetic grenade pod, and then I'm running the heat shell and the heavy machine gun. But like I said, after doing this video and spending some time with the mortar weapon, I would really like to be able to use that more, and hopefully some people see the benefits of it. If you have any questions on tank, I'm going to do some other tank videos on just general gameplay, how to view the battlefield, how to stay alive longer, assessing where to put yourself, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do a video on that as well, but I wanted to start out in the loadout section because it's really important to think about what you're going to be going up against, what how you want to play, whether it's aggressive against vehicles or aggressive against personnel, and then that really depict how you're going to lay out your loadouts for not only yourself but the other people sitting in the other seats. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions with any of this or any tank action or loadouts, please leave them in the comments below, and we will catch you on the next video. Thank you for watching.